Have you ever felt like your heart was whispering truths no one else could hear? That quiet ache, the one that visits when the house is silent, when the phone doesn't ring, when you look in the mirror and wonder if someone, somewhere, is still capable of seeing your soul beyond the years, beyond the roles, beyond the efforts. There's a kind of tenderness in being a woman who has lived, a woman who has tried, a woman who, even after the betrayals, still wants to believe that love is possible. But sometimes, that longing can twist itself into habits that diminish our light, without us even noticing. It's not that you're weak. It's not that you don't know your worth. It's just that after so many years of giving, of bending, of trying to be enough, some part of you began to think that love had to be earned through effort, not received with grace. You started to explain too much, to accept too little, to wait for someone to notice the depth of your love, even when they barely touch the surface. Louise said, "You've been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens." And maybe that's the shift. Maybe the problem has never been about how men see you, but how deeply you're willing to see yourself. Because when a woman approves of herself, truly, quietly, completely, something changes. She stops chasing. She starts choosing. And yet it's not easy, especially not when you've been taught, directly or through silence, that your value is tied to your ability to be desirable, accommodating, low maintenance, especially not when age begins to touch your skin and the world grows quieter in response. But aging is not diminishing, not for a woman who is awakening. You are not less because time has passed. You are more rooted, more wise, more powerful in the ways that truly matter. Marianne Williamson reminds us, "You were not born to shrink to fit into someone else's story. You were born to shine as you are." And maybe that's what this video is about. Not warnings, not judgments, but gentle awakenings, subtle recognitions, a return to the truth that your presence, your love, your voice, they are sacred. They were never meant to be traded for crumbs. You are not a leaf in the wind of male approval. You are a rooted tree. You do not need to bend every time someone threatens to walk away. You do not need to explain your worth. You only need to remember it. Because when you remember who you are, the way you love changes. The way you tolerate changes. The way you choose changes. And so today, we're not just talking about habits. We're talking about stories. The stories that shaped how you show up in love. The stories that taught you to overfunction, to silence yourself, to wait longer than you should. And maybe the story you're finally ready to rewrite. Let's begin. And what happens when the story you're living isn't the one your heart longs to tell? You begin to explain, not once, not twice, but constantly, hoping that if you say it just right, if you reveal your feelings clearly enough, they'll finally understand, they'll finally see you, and maybe love you differently. But explaining your emotions over and over again is not connection. It's not intimacy. It's emotional labor rooted in the fear of being too much, of pushing him away, of confirming the quiet belief that your needs might be a burden. So you soften your words. You rehearse your pain. You wrap your truth in gentleness, not because it feels natural, but because you're scared he'll pull away if you don't. But a man who is ready doesn't need you to earn your right to feel. He doesn't require translation. He meets you where you are because he's there too. And if he can't, that's not your failure. That's your clarity. It starts young, this pattern of over-explaining. You were taught to be kind, to be accommodating, to make sure no one felt uncomfortable around your emotions. And so you became skilled in the art of softening, of shrinking, of apologizing for needing more than someone wanted to give. But love doesn't require that you disappear to be accepted. Real love can hold your fire. It can sit with your storms. It doesn't ask you to dim what makes you luminous. You may think that being emotionally transparent is the path to closeness. And in some cases it is, but only when it flows both ways. Only when your openness is received with presence, not with silence or dismissal. Otherwise, it becomes a performance, a monologue, a cry for connection that keeps echoing back unanswered. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from always being the one who explains, the one who bridges the gap, the one who carries the emotional weight of two people. And maybe it's time to put it down, because the moment you stop explaining in hopes of being understood, you begin to understand something far more important, yourself. But what if the confusion isn't in your words, but in his? When a man shows up with vague promises, blurry intentions, or inconsistent behavior, it's easy to fall into a dangerous rhythm of translation. He pulls away, and you fill in the blanks with hope. He says just enough to keep you from leaving, but never enough to truly stay. And so, in that gray space, your heart writes stories. Maybe he's afraid. Maybe he needs more time. Maybe it's your fault. You were too intense, too honest, too emotional. But your soul doesn't want to solve emotional riddles. It craves honesty, presence, safety. You don't want mystery. You want mutuality. The kind of connection where someone doesn't leave you guessing, but makes you feel chosen. Clearly, openly, consistently. Still, when you've been let down before, there's something strangely comforting about waiting, about turning uncertainty into possibility, because hope, even misplaced, can feel warmer than the cold truth of absence. But that warmth is a flicker. It doesn't sustain, and the longer you wait in ambiguity, the more disconnected you become from your own knowing. You start to doubt your intuition. You start to question your needs. You start to shrink, not because he asked you to, but because clarity never arrived. And the silence began to shape you. But clarity is not too much to ask. It's not demanding. It's not dramatic. It's sacred. And when you stop accepting confusion as a sign to hold on and start seeing it as an invitation to let go, something inside you shifts. Because love, real love, doesn't hide behind maybe. It shows up in yes. And there's another kind of quiet ache, the one that comes when you're always the one reaching. You initiate the conversations. You plan the moments. You offer depth, warmth, understanding. You stretch yourself wide, hoping he'll meet you halfway, but he rarely does. And still, you continue, because a part of you believes that if you stop, everything might disappear, that if you don't keep it going, there will be nothing left to hold on to. So you overfunction. You text first. You apologize first. You dive into emotional depths, hoping he'll swim with you, but he barely gets his feet wet. And the most painful part? You begin to equate your efforts with your worth, as if your ability to sustain the connection is proof of your value. But love doesn't live in one-sided effort. Love doesn't require you to carry it alone. And interest, real interest, is never passive. A man who is truly present doesn't need to be pulled along. He walks beside you. He shows up with you. Not because you made it easy, but because he chose to. The fear of losing him makes you hold tighter, try harder, bend further. But maybe the real fear is not about losing him. It's about facing what it means if he never truly chose you in the first place. And that truth, it hurts, but it also heals. Because when you stop initiating everything, you begin to see what was real and what was just your effort keeping it alive. And that's not failure. That's freedom. A woman who respects herself doesn't chase. She invites. She receives. She allows. Because her presence is not a performance. It's a quiet power. And the right man? He'll feel it and move toward it, not away. There's a moment when even the smallest gesture can feel like a lifeline. He replies after days of silence. He compliments your hair. He remembers something you said last week. And suddenly, your heart leaps. Maybe he cares. Maybe it's not as one-sided as it seems. But this is not love speaking. It's deprivation. Emotional hunger can make crumbs feel like a feast. When you've been empty for too long, you begin to celebrate what should have been basic. You overpraise the bare minimum. You turn delayed responses into proof of interest. You romanticize gestures that, in truth, only reveal how low the bar has fallen. It's not your fault. You learn to survive on less because more was never consistently offered. Somewhere along the way, you convinced yourself that asking for consistency was too much, that being easy to please would make you more lovable. But it didn't. It only made your needs invisible. And over time, you started to forget what it felt like to be fully seen, fully met, fully honored. Because when the bar is set low, it's not just others who forget your worth. You begin to forget it too. But your heart is not a bargain. Your presence is not a reward for minimal effort. You are not here to applaud someone for showing up halfway. The kind of love that sustains doesn't ask you to feel grateful for breadcrumbs. It offers the whole table. It shares the meal. It stays through dessert and conversation and quiet moments of being. And you deserve nothing less than a love that feels like presence, not pity, respect, not reassurance. Truth, not tokens. Because when you stop celebrating the scraps, you make space for something nourishing to finally arrive. And sometimes, the deepest wound is not what he did. It's what you tolerated in silence. You sit across from someone who speaks to you with disregard, who mocks your sensitivity, who ignores your boundaries, and yet, you stay. Not because you don't see the disrespect, but because the alternative feels lonelier. So you rationalize. You tell yourself he's stressed, tired, scared. You say, he doesn't mean it. You whisper, at least he's still here. But beneath the justification, there's a truth your heart already knows. Staying quiet doesn't keep the love alive. It slowly kills your spirit. Every time you swallow your pain just to avoid conflict, you are the one who disappears. Every time you excuse the inexcusable, you are the one who is left behind. Because self-abandonment is the first betrayal, and it is the most painful one. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens in small moments. You stay quiet when something hurts. You smile when you want to cry. You nod when everything inside you is saying no. And before you know it, you've built a relationship on silence. Not intimacy, not truth, just fear of being alone. But the cost of loneliness in company is far greater than the solitude of your own truth. There is a kind of aloneness that frees you, that reminds you who you are, that teaches you how to return to yourself. You are not here to be tolerated. You are not here to make someone comfortable at the expense of your soul. You are here to be respected, to be cherished, to be mirrored in your depth. And if someone can't meet you there, let your silence be sacred, not suppressed. Let it be the space where you begin again, not the place where you disappear. There's something sacred about your story, the moments that shaped you, the heartbreaks that cracked you open, the wisdom carved from sorrow. It is not meant for just anyone. And yet, in the early stages of connection, it's tempting to share everything, to open the book of your life too soon, to offer your depths before he's shown he can swim, because vulnerability can feel like closeness, like bonding, like trust. But when shared without discernment, it becomes exposure. You give pieces of yourself to someone who hasn't earned the right to hold them. And then, when they leave, or minimize what you've shared, it doesn't just hurt. It feels like a betrayal of your essence. You may believe that if you're honest enough, open enough, real enough, he'll see the truth of who you are and choose you. But the ones who are ready don't need convincing. They don't need your pain as proof. They feel your energy. They recognize your soul. And still, you might ask, what's wrong with being real? Nothing. But being real doesn't mean giving yourself away too quickly. It means pacing. It means knowing that your truth is precious, not because it's hidden, but because it's held with care. Louise Hay would remind you that everything in your life deserves love, including the parts you protect. Your wounds are not shameful, but they are sacred, and sacred things need safe places. So speak your truth, but first, ask yourself, has he earned the space you're about to give him? Is his presence stable, respectful, consistent? Or are you handing your story to someone who only came to visit? Because when you love yourself deeply, you don't rush to be understood. You allow your story to unfold gently, at the pace of trust, at the rhythm of real connection. And that is not withholding, it's wisdom. And then there's the ache that comes when you forget to anchor into yourself. You find someone who excites you, who brings a flicker of aliveness to your days. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, he becomes the center. His presence defines your worth. His responses set the tone of your mood. His absence feels like a hole too wide to fill. And so, you begin to seek exclusivity, not because you are grounded in yourself, but because you feel adrift without him. You're emotionally open, but not necessarily emotionally anchored. You long for commitment, but haven't yet committed to your own emotional safety. You want to be chosen, but haven't fully chosen yourself. And in that space, love becomes rescue, not partnership. If he's the only thing that steadies you, then love becomes a lifeline. But that's not love, that's dependency. And no matter how strong the bond feels, it cannot grow from a place where your entire self rests in someone else's hands. Louise Hay taught that we must first approve of ourselves. That self-approval creates the foundation from which all other relationships blossom. Without that root, we reach outward to fill what must be cultivated inward. Exclusivity should be an expression of wholeness, not a remedy for emptiness. When you are emotionally exclusive with yourself, loyal to your truth, your needs, your boundaries, then you no longer seek to be claimed out of fear. You become available for connection, not completion. And that shift, that changes everything. Because when you no longer need someone to anchor you, you begin to attract those who are already standing in their own depth. And together, you meet, not in desperation, but in devotion. Sometimes the silence doesn't come from him. It comes from you. You want to be seen as easygoing, chill, not needy, so you dim your voice. You swallow your discomfort. You nod instead of speak. You convince yourself that asking for what you need will push him away, that setting a boundary will scare him off, that expressing your truth makes you difficult. And slowly, without even realizing it, you begin to disappear. You laugh when something hurts. You say, "I'm fine," when your heart is anything but. You pretend not to notice when he pulls away, not because it doesn't matter, but because you don't want to seem like the woman who notices too much, feels too deeply, asks for too clearly. But hiding your needs doesn't make you low maintenance. It makes you invisible. And the tragedy is, many women don't realize they've faded until they're looking in the mirror and can't find themselves anymore. Louise Hay reminds us, what you suppress festers. What you express heals. That doesn't mean you need to pour everything out all at once. It means giving yourself permission to speak, to feel, to say what hurts, what excites, what you long for. Suppressing your truth to maintain peace is not peace. It's postponement. And eventually, it turns into resentment. Toward him, toward the relationship, toward yourself. You were not born to be agreeable. You were born to be authentic. And a love that is real will not require you to choose between the two. It will hold your needs with reverence, not resistance. Because when you begin to honor your voice, something beautiful happens. You start to believe in it again. And when you believe in your voice, others do too. Not out of fear, but out of deep, sacred respect. There is a kind of hope that feels more like a spell. He disappears. He changes. He becomes distant, inconsistent, unavailable. But instead of meeting that shift with truth, you meet it with fantasy. You begin to explain it away. Maybe he's busy. Maybe he's overwhelmed. Maybe you did something wrong. And just like that, you leave the present moment and enter the story of what could be. You replay the good times, the early promises, the tender words he once spoke. You hold on to potential instead of presence. You stay in hope longer than you stay in truth. And that, more than his silence, is what hurts the most. Because deep down, you've always known. There's a quiet voice inside that whispers when something doesn't feel right. But listening to that voice would mean facing a loss, letting go, admitting that what you hoped for isn't real, not because you're unworthy, but because it was never mutual. And so, you pretend. You stretch the benefit of the doubt until it breaks your heart. You cling to the possibility that love will return if you just hold on a little longer. But healing asks a different question. Not, when will he come back? But what am I pretending not to see? Louise Hay's wisdom reminds us that the first act of self-love is honesty, not harshness, not judgment, just the gentle courage to see clearly, to meet reality with compassion, not with denial. There's nothing wrong with hope. Hope is beautiful, but hope that ignores your truth becomes a cage. And your heart? It wasn't made for cages. It was made for flight, for freedom, for love that feels like home, not like waiting, not like wondering, not like trying to decode silence. The moment you stop pretending, you begin to return to yourself, and that is where all true healing begins. There's a quiet truth that lives beneath all these patterns. You were never meant to beg for love. You were meant to embody it, to walk with it, to become it. Not in a performative way, not by being perfect, but by remembering that your presence, your full, feeling, knowing, radiant presence, is already enough. Louise Hay knew this. Her healing truth wasn't just about affirmations. It was about identity, about returning to the self that was never broken, only buried under years of trying to be loved in ways that cost you too much. Marianne Williamson echoes that same call. Your playing small does not serve the world, and it doesn't serve you. The habits you've outgrown may have once protected you, but now they're too tight, too small, too painful to keep wearing. And so, With each one you release, over-explaining, over-functioning, accepting crumbs, silencing your needs, you make a new kind of promise, a sacred one, not to him, but to the girl you used to be, the one who waited, the one who hurt, the one who thought she had to earn what should have always been hers. Let every habit you drop be a prayer to her. Let every boundary you set be a hand reaching back in time, telling her, I see you now. I'll never let anyone treat you like you're small again. Because in the end, it's not your emotions that make a man lose respect. It's not your truth. It's not your needs. It's when you stop respecting your own emotions, when you abandon yourself, that others follow. But you're remembering now. You're returning. And the woman you're becoming is not one who waits for approval. She is the one who chooses, the one who stays grounded, the one who walks away when the energy no longer mirrors her worth. If this touched something inside you, I invite you to join this space. Subscribe to the channel and share this with another woman who might be quietly forgetting her own value. Let's walk this path of remembering together. And if you're ready for the next step in your healing journey, click on the video that just appeared on your screen. It's there waiting for you, just like you've been waiting to come back home to yourself.